So really glad you're all with us tonight. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. I'm Kim Porter. I'm the Executive Director of Be a Part of the Conversation. This is our third in a series of online programs we're hosting every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. We look forward to resuming our in-person community events once it's safe for us to all be back in public gathering areas. But until then, we're going to do our best to provide opportunities for all of us to stay connected. Next week, we will be back here again at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, the 21st, with Caroline Finkel. Dr. Finkel is the director of Center for Families in Malvern, and she's going to be talking about isolation. Her actual topic is coping with COVID, embracing isolation. Caroline's kind of become pretty well known for her talk about isolation, especially with regard to the adolescent population and young adults. So that will be especially interesting, I think, for those family members. But we're really excited she'll be with us next week. But tonight we have some amazing panelists. I'm so excited and grateful that they're with us. Each of them is really passionate about supporting families and our loved ones. Tonight we're focusing on parents and other caregivers, some of the challenges we might be facing with boundaries, especially during this really unique situation that most of us are in with being sheltered in place. I'm a parent of 2 adult children. My 31-year-old son has been in recovery since 2010, but the fears I had before he entered treatment and really even for years into his sobriety are still really fresh for me. And I'm also a certified family recovery specialist. And so I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to talk with parents pretty regularly who are walking down that same road. And some of the conversations I've been having lately really made it clear that we need to talk about boundaries, just coming together during this really challenging time and talk about, how that looks in this really unique situation and navigating this uncharted territory. Just a few housekeeping items. As an attendee, you're in viewing mode only, so you're not visible on this webinar, nor can we hear you. I'm going to actually share my screen and show you a little bit about what this might look like for you. Hang on one second. Okay, so this should pretty much be what your device looks like, whether you're on a phone or a laptop. Couple of things you might want to take note of. Let's see, there's the Q&A button so that you can click on that and you'll have a little dialog box pop up. You can ask any question, and you also, there's how you would type in your question, and then you can check that little box, and when it turns blue, you'll be sending it anonymously, or you can uncheck it if you are not worried about that. And then you get your response, or we'll answer you verbally. Sometimes it's going to be a typed answer, but most of the time we're going to try to get to your questions verbally. So, and we really want you to ask a lot of questions. That's what we're here for. You also have the opportunity to chat if you'd rather do that. In that case, you can chat. I believe you can chat with us individually or as a group. Either of those options are fine. Finally, there's also, that's what a chat looks like. Then you also have the option to raise your hand. If you raise your hand, that is going to tell me that you would like to ask a question audibly, so that you want to either unmute down below so that we can hear you and you can ask a question. You can even share your video if you raise your hand. I'll give you those options, and that bottom piece will show up. I think sometimes we like to be able to show our face and ask a question instead of just typing it in. So we just want you to have that option. And we're just going to ask you to not worry about the rest of those functions down below to kind of keep things simple. I wanted to point out that we have a follow-up page for all of these topics, but for this one in particular, that is the website that you can go to. Tomorrow morning, a video presentation will be there of what you're seeing right now. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but that is the website. Conversation.zone is our website, and then /parents is the page. And basically, oops, here, I wanted to show you that page. So here's the parent page. You can subscribe to our newsletter here. And this is where the video will be, so that if you want to watch it again, share it with friends. And I really want to draw your attention to this survey bar. We'd love to hear from you. Please let us know what you thought about this, and there's an opportunity to let us know topics you want to hear in the future. For example, we don't have anything scheduled for May 5th right now. If there's something that you think we really need to be covering, let us know that in your feedback. We really, really read those and want to hear from you. And then as we have each of us presenting this evening, we're going to include resources from them. So as they say, oh, I wanted to make sure you post information about this, that, or the other thing that we're talking about, you can find that here on this page. And there are also lots of other resources here for parents. This is a great time for podcasts. There's so many good ones. And then this will take you to future programs that are here on Tuesday nights. But also we have a parent meeting every Wednesday night. That's what this is about. On Wednesdays at 7, Parent Partnership. It's just another online meeting, but it's specifically for parents like me. So that, I think, is all I had to share there. Okay, so I want to introduce you to Tessa Ricci. She's our communications director.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you.
So Tessa's going to help out with answering your questions and all of that sort of thing, or at least keeping track of them, because we do have a number of you with us tonight. We are recording this webinar, but your questions will not be visible in the recording. The ones that you type won't be visible. Obviously, us asking them will be there. The link to the recording will be available on that page that I just showed you. And you'll also be getting a follow-up email in about 24 hours that has links to all of the above. I am really, really grateful to our presenters this evening. I think you are in very good hands. And so we're going to start with, well, you're going to hear from Lisa Silk first, and then you're going to hear from Adam Lush, who is with Caron Treatment Center. And then you'll hear from my really dear, dear, dear friends, Pam and Bill Roberts, who helped to get all these parent support groups started a long time ago. They'll tell you more about that. But Lisa, I'm going to ask you to unmute and get us started.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Silk. Thank you so much, Kim, for having me tonight. Would you like me to start by sharing my screen now, or should we just kind of?
Do you want to tell us a little bit?
Yeah. Why don't I just introduce a little bit, if that's okay? So again, my name is Lisa Silk. I am the founder of the Silk Counseling Group. I have been practicing in the drug and alcohol field as a therapist for the last 15 years. My first 5 years, I practiced in the Baltimore area. And then my husband and I moved to the Philadelphia area about 10 years ago, and I started private practice then, which has recently kind of grown, getting more water, thank you, to a group practice. So I have a few therapists that I work with. We do couples work, we do family work, parental coaching, individual therapy. And the clients that we serve, again, the primary diagnosis often is substance use disorders. So that's our specialty, but obviously that goes hand in hand with eating disorders, mood disorders, attention deficit disorders, personality disorders, all kinds of disorders. And, I think that this is a particularly great topic. I just want to say, when you asked me to do it, it's a difficult topic. It's certainly not an easy, these are unprecedented times, but to be talking about boundaries with our loved ones who may still be using and or drinking, is incredibly challenging, especially when they're living with us, or in some cases, maybe even when they're not living with us, and we have so much fear around that. So I think it's a really necessary topic. I'm honored that, Kim, that you asked me to share with you all tonight. And I think the first thing that I want to say before we begin is that I often refer to being in active addiction as sort of the imposter syndrome. I know that, Kim, you've heard me tell the story about my grandmother before, who suffered from Alzheimer's, and I was very close with her. She I would look forward to visiting her. And when I would get there, it was like I wasn't with her. And I would leave with this feeling like it wasn't really her. She would look like herself, but so similar to addiction. Her eyes, like the windows to her, she just wasn't there. And so the thought of everyone, people here in this webinar tonight who are living with their children, who look like their children, but really you kind of have that feeling like they're just not there. I'm going to refer a lot to that because I think it's important to know, who are we setting boundaries with? If we're thinking about, I'm setting boundaries with the imposter or the addiction, it's a lot easier to set those boundaries than, my dear son that I'm looking at a photo of him when he was 7 and he was, than it is to sort of be like, okay, I can firmly set a boundary with this disease, because this disease is not my son. It doesn't define my son. It is something that he deals with, that we all deal with, but it is not him. So with that, I'm going to kind of get started. I'm about to share my PowerPoint. Bear with me. Let me see if I can. Is that working?
Perfect. Looks great.
Okay, great. Okay, so to start, I just kind of want to just define boundaries, which I really like this definition: the limits we set with other people, which indicate what we find acceptable and unacceptable in their behavior towards us. So we have physical boundaries, which is the space that we need. This is such an interesting time because we are, generally they say the research supports that we need like 2 feet in front of us and about 1.5 feet behind us, kind of to feel this sense of safety. Right now we need like 6 feet circumference. But we all have this sense of physical space, and for everyone that's different. Our emotional boundaries, what our feelings are, this is like where those I statements, when you blank, I feel blank. Intellectual or cognitive, our thoughts, our opinions, our beliefs, where those lie. I'm allowed to have a different feeling than you. And then our personal kind of self-care wellness boundaries. One of my personal boundaries is that when I'm out and about in the world, when I'm not quarantined, I attend about 5 meetings a week. So my family knows that, and that sort of affects where, if I'm able to pick up a dance, because I have a 10 o'clock step meeting on Saturdays that I attend, those kinds of boundaries. So the benefits of healthy boundaries: respect. We teach people how to treat us. That's one of my favorite lines. I say it all the time. And I put this in because I think people always ask me whenever I speak, how am I going to get my child? How did you want to get clean? What was that light bulb moment? And I don't know that there's always a light bulb moment, but I think that when loved ones set healthy boundaries with people who suffer from substance use disorders, they definitely have a greater chance that their loved one will seek help, because their loved one will then be forced to feel the consequences or the nature of their disease instead of someone else absorbing that. Consequences then for weak boundaries, a loss of our sense of self. So even in kind of rearing your children, you may have had a pretty defined sense of self as you came up through the world, as you went through college, as you, emerged into your careers and reared your kids, and then their addictions sort of started to take over and you began to lose your own voice. The more we don't hold on to that voice, the further and further away kind of we melt away as we don't hold on to our boundaries. So sometimes it becomes even difficult. I know when I work with families who have been in this a long time, where they don't even know what they believe or think anymore. trusting their own gut is so difficult. And then when we don't have healthy boundaries, we can be very easily manipulated. And our loved ones have a greater chance of remaining in active addiction. Okay, so acceptance is kind of the first thing in establishing boundaries during a pandemic. Acceptance is my absolute favorite thing. I say acceptance all the time. It will be throughout my very brief presentation. And the first thing I think about this is, what do I need to accept about where my loved one is at? You know, where are they on a trajectory of motivation for being sober, getting sober, staying sober, clean? And really trying to be as honest with ourselves as possible in that. And then being clear about your expectations that you have with yourself. So if your loved one is like, whoa, I'm quarantined now, my parents are letting me come stay back in the house and I don't really have to do anything, no one's going to expect anything from me, and I'm gonna, you know, have my buddy down the street be delivering me drugs to the window, and that's where your loved one's at, and you're at, we're going to be quarantined together and I'm going to put him on a schedule and we're going to be applying for jobs and he can take the certification class and he's going to do chores every day and we're going to have family dinner every single night and take walks with Buster the dog. Those are really, really far apart. So we kind of have to figure out where they are, where you are. And then I would say take that information and bring it to someone in your support network, a sponsor, someone from your parent meetings. Check out your expectations. Are these expectations reasonable? You know, given where they are, given where I am, like, and anything in between, is this something that I can reasonably expect? I think that this is such a great time for growth for everyone. I think that's one of the benefits of this time is we can really take a moment to have introspection and say, for right here, how do I naturally react? So if you're someone who responds to your loved one with anger, you know, because you feel so angry at the disease that you lash out in anger, or maybe inside you feel angry, so then you in turn overly correct that into very coddling, very enabling. It's kind of knowing yourself and what your go-to response is, and how do I kind of pivot from there? What's my growth potential from that point? Okay. Oh, my dog is with me. Okay, so I'm gonna have everyone do a building boundary exercise. Since we can't see you, right, Kim, we can't see them, right?
That's right.
Okay. Okay. So everyone should feel comfortable to do this. What I'm going to have you first do is to close your eyes and to count to 10 in your head while taking some deep breaths. So you're going to imagine that you're surrounded by a circle. And then imagine that the circle becomes a visible wall that you are creating, made of whatever material you choose. So it could be kind of a clear bubble. It could be bricks. But you want to make sure that this circle around you gives you enough space. You want to bring everything inside this circle and the wall that you're building that you need to maintain it. So just take a moment to see what it feels like to be in this space. This is your space. No one comes in this space with you. And this wall can be flexed, so we can push a brick out if we need to. We can kind of bend something from time to time in order to allow for flexibility. And the key is that you really feel safe within this space, and that you can bring inside of it the things that you need to take care of yourself. And so I'm not going to have you guys do this now, but generally you would stay within this space for a minute each day and kind of get a sense of what this feels like. Everyone can open their eyes. So my suggestion is I have clients do this where they repeat this exercise every day, you know, and if you continue to do this, just like, you know, we call a support person, or, you know, newcomers are told to call your sponsor every day, because if you call your sponsor every day, then you're more likely to reach out to them when you really need them. So many people say to me, I don't have anything to talk to them about. And that's okay, right? But then when you do, you might be more likely to call them. So if you put yourself in this space each day, you might be more likely to kind of access it when you need it. So when someone feels like they're being really intrusive into your boundary, you can sort of just, even with your eyes open, because I don't advise closing your eyes while you're speaking to your loved one and they're lashing out at you. I'm imagining my wall that Lisa Silk told me to build around myself. But just sort of have that feeling, hold on to that feeling of safety and space. Okay, continuing on with this, establishing boundaries during a pandemic. Work together with your spouse or co-parent. So I think trying to get on the same page is key. I know a lot of times we don't have this, you know, sometimes if we're dealing with a divorced family, maybe the parent that tends to be a little bit more enabling, the child staying with them or choosing to stay with them. Some people seem to be very far apart on this, but you know, I do find that the more that I coach parents on seeing, at least if we can show up as a unified for the best outcome of them not trying to divide and split, you know, it's for the best interest of your child. Develop signals. So if you are in the same house, you can have some signals, code words that you use to be like, okay, we're done, or your turn, or any of those things that they can be. They can be funny so that there's like laughter and lightness. And know that your savvy addict will know that you're doing this probably, and that's okay. You could say, well, we're trying to work together and this is how we best know how to do that. Accept your own triggers. Know what triggers you. If you know them, you can get support to not react to them. If you're going into having a conversation where you need to set a boundary, I would suggest making a phone call ahead of time. I also would suggest giving a warning to your loved one. We're going to be meeting at 6 o'clock tonight to talk about X, you know, things like that. I'll get to that a little bit later. And then flexibility around what's important. So I think we all need to be a little bit more gentle with ourselves right now. I know people are more gentle with, you know, maybe not adhering to their strict diets that they always do, or, you know, just having a little bit more forgiveness around stuff. So if there's a little bit more increased screen time because it makes it easier, or the room, you know, pick your battles around some of this stuff, the sleep schedules. If you're dealing with someone who is in college and they're up and they get their work done when they get their work done, letting go of some of the stuff, you know, I think can be helpful. Be clear about your expectations. So have a family meeting, negotiations, and I think knowing, you know, what are your bottom lines? This is something I really wish I would have put in the PowerPoint. So I think bottom lines are very important. What are you not willing as parents to move on? And holding firm to that. That's okay. But also having some negotiations around, okay, well, I really would like their room to be clean, but as long as they pick up stuff around the house that they left out, I'm okay with you close your door and your room is a mess. Form and plan together. So if we involve them, they'll be more invested, creating kind of a contract, or what does that look like while you're here in our home right now? It may not look like what it's going to look like on the other side, but for now, this is what it's going to look like while we're quarantined together. And then frequently checking in on how things are going. How are things going for you, and how are things going for us? And everyone should have a time to share their feelings around that. So I know I just said be loose around some of the things, but these are some things that you have the right to ask for if they're really important to you. Family dinner. So how often would we have that? Taking walks, getting outside, a family game night, you know, and some of this stuff is based on whether or not, where is your person? Are they in early recovery? You know, are they still not yet motivated to be clean and sober? Structure and schedule when it makes sense. Chores. I put chores. My husband's like, he looked at this form, I'm like, can you edit it? He's like, what do you mean by chores? I'm like, well, if they're using, they have one chore. If they're not, they have more than one chore. He's like, okay. So, if unfortunately your person is not clean and sober, they may not be able to do a lot, but I think having some expectation of them is reasonable. So, is it worth it? This is my husband's favorite Al-Anon saying. He actually told me that. And I said to him, really? Do you have to use that a lot? He said he does. Mine is, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? And does this need to be said by me now? I think running things through those three questions is so helpful, because very often the answer is no, which leads me to my next bullet of it also, no is a complete sentence. You don't have to give a lot more than that. And these, you know, these aren't things for the pandemic. These are just kind of the regular old ways in which we need to live in this world when we love someone with substance use disorder. You have the right to pause. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to take space. You know, believe me, they'll be here, right? We don't know, we're not getting out anytime soon. Okay, so self-care can still happen in the pandemic. Take care of yourself. Kim mentioned podcasts. There's so many great podcasts. A social distant walk with a friend, going for a drive. You know, I know one of the things that I realized, and I have to keep reassessing what works for me in my own self-care, but I made a lot of my sober support calls during rides. So I call my sponsor when I head to my 7 a.m. meeting in the morning, and I don't head to my 7 a.m. meeting in the morning. Now I'm on an 8:30 a.m. Zoom meeting, and I'm getting my son loaded on his Zoom meeting prior. So I don't have that window. So kind of recreating some of that stuff. Some people I know, I have a few friends who actually drive to work and then they just drive back. They make a little loop just so they can like have that separation between their home time and coming back to work, even though they're working from home, which is also a good time to kind of make a call to get some privacy. I can't tell you how many sessions I'm doing with people in their cars. so many people are in their cars because they really need that private moment. And that may be the only private space you truly have right now. So it's okay to take some time to just kind of be in there. I think going for a drive also reminds us that there's more than just these walls of our home that we're living in. Friendly reminders of our life outside of the space, which can be helpful. Meditation, teletherapy. So I am, and I know my colleagues, everyone I talk to in my field, we are more busy now than we were in our offices. So I, probably increased the amount of clients I'm able to see, I don't know, by like 15, 20% since I've been home. So that's great. So I know more other clinicians are doing sliding scales. In my practice, we're offering sliding scales. So there's a lot of flexibility to be able to get support. Call your support network. Recovery buddy. This is one of the things that I ask people. So for people in a parent support network, if you have someone in your support network who has a child that's in recovery, one of the greatest things about recovery is that we need to get out of self. That's like one of the first things we're taught. And I think it can be really helpful for parents who either have a child in early recovery or their child's not choosing to yet be in recovery to have one of their support group parents, kids who are in recovery, be willing to be their recovery buddy. They can kind of bounce things off of. And a lot of times people who are sober are more than happy to do that. They love being an expert on recovery or, any of those things. And it's such a good way for them to be able to give back to parents. Great way for parents to ask, what do you think? My son said this or that. And I think it also really gives parents, especially whose kids aren't ready yet, hope that if I'm speaking to someone, I know people have that with a lot of us clinicians who are also in recovery, but I think it can really give a lot of hope. So also attending support group meetings, there are so many. That's one of my silver linings slides is you can literally be at a meeting. I know so many parent meetings, Al-Anon meetings are online. If people are having a hard time getting them, I will get them to Kim and she can send them out. Or you're welcome to email me. Also, I recommend to parents, you can attend an open AA meeting. Right now is a great time to do it virtually. You can turn your camera off, you can put yourself on mute. As long as it's listed as open, it's a great opportunity to hear kind of from other people who suffer from substance use disorders. What is their solution? What does that look like? I know it's given people that I work with that I make that recommendation to a lot of hope. And this is the easiest time to do it because you're doing it virtually. You don't have to walk into the room. Continue to reassess your needs and make necessary adjustments. Okay, so silver linings. This is an opportunity to make up for lost time in some ways. If your child is in early recovery, then they, some things, I don't think it's, I caution this statement by saying not to have unreasonable expectations, right? They are clean, yes, but there is a lot that goes into that change happening. And that takes time. It takes work and time. But this also is an opportunity for you to maybe spend some time with them while you're not dealing with the imposter person, right? Your child actually looks like the lights are on in there and you can have a real conversation with them and a connection. And there's a lot to be said for that. There's 12-step meetings around the clock. I have a friend who has insomnia. She goes to meetings in Ireland in the middle of the night, like almost every night. There's authors and like amazing people in recovery who you can go. I have people come to me and they're like, I only like the meetings in LA where I was in my recovery house. I'm like, great, you can go to meetings in LA. They like their speaker meetings better out there for some reason. There's the smaller fellowships have great accessibility. So SLAA meetings, my Gamblers Anonymous meetings, any of my clients who suffer from those behavioral addictions, there's so many meetings for them, and they sometimes have a harder time accessing them face to face. Modeling, you have a great opportunity to model structure, boundaries, and a full life to your loved one. And this is also an opportunity to do it differently. So if you've been going to meetings and you've been working on changing yourself, this is a chance to really show your loved one your growth and change. And learning and sharing of ourselves. I shared this with Kim, and I will kind of end with this. My family has, you know, in growing up, many of you know, because I think a lot of the families, you know, have heard my story, but, you know, I was a pretty reckless teenager from the time when I was like early in middle school, and I didn't have a lot of opportunity or real interest in learning about my parents at that time. And so now each night, my kids, you can tell they're such like a therapist's children because they share a feeling word with my parents. So we call my parents every night at 7:30, and they say, you know, this is the word. And then my parents have 24 hours to come up with a story from their childhood that pertains to this word when they experienced it. So like when they were jealous or embarrassed, and we all sit around the phone at 7:30, and my parents share these stories. And I can't tell you how much I have learned about my parents that I had no idea. I mean, some of the coolest things, some of the neatest things. And I don't know that if we didn't have this time that I would have done that. So get creative, come up with some ideas. And, you know, again, I think the biggest thing, and then I'm sorry, I feel like I went way over on my time, but I think it's to really hold on to what those bottom lines are for yourself, but be flexible in the other ones and kind of meet your loved one and negotiate from there. I think I leave you with anything, and that we are also really able to self-care during this time. And it's so important that we do so. So thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. I'm going to do my best to stop sharing my PowerPoint.
Wow, Lisa, that was like beyond, I mean, you just, wow. Your silver linings were so perfect. There was, I mean, so many notes about, and I know my friend Laura is on this line, and she's one of our group leaders. And I know she was doing the same thing I was, like, ooh, that would be a great topic. You just gave us like 12 topics for parent group meetings in the future. The recovery buddy, awesome. I never heard you talk about that before. That's very cool. And I love the idea of open AA meetings or NA meetings. I often also recommend that for siblings who are struggling, just because there's often a challenge of some resentments and things like that, that if you get into those open AA, NA meetings, you can hear it with unbiased ears and just sort of listen and take it in, and maybe get a different perspective and more of a sense of empathy. And so I love that idea too. So thank you for that. Amazing. Okay, Adam, you're up.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Lisa. That was wonderful. My name's Adam Lush. I am the Regional Resource Director for Caron Treatment Centers in the Greater Philadelphia area. I work with Caron to help patients, help families with loved ones who are considering treatment for their loved ones, help that loved one access the treatment that they need. And then I also work with the patients that we have at Caron to connect them with resources post-treatment so they can have a life of recovery. So those of you who aren't familiar with Caron, we're a nonprofit substance abuse treatment program. We've been around for 60 years. We've got an extensive continuum of care. We treat teens, young adults, older adults. We do work with families. We have a whole lot of resources, which I'll be sure to share on the linked page that Kim will set up. There's a few things that I'll mention that we're doing now digitally that are available. We have a whole learning center for parents and families, so I'll make sure you guys get the link for that. You know, before I get started, I just wanted to comment. I'm looking at the participant number here, and I see, you know, right now we've got 73 people tuned in, and I'm personally a person in long-term recovery, so I'm going to share a little bit of my experience entering into recovery from a very young age. One of the things that I noticed when I entered into recovery was that I had this feeling that everybody else in the world had been handed this book that had all the rules and directions for what you were supposed to do with life, and that I just missed out on when they were handing those books out. I just never got one. I felt like I was kind of lost, and I was the only one that felt the way that I did, and I was very alone, and no one had the same experiences that I did. And then I entered into recovery, and I was surrounded by people that had very similar experiences. And when I'm looking at this number of participants, now it's 74. There's 74 of us on this call now that our lives have been touched by addiction, substance use disorder, alcoholism in one form or another, or are currently being impacted by it. We're not alone. And I think I just really, want to thank everybody for, joining in on this call, because it's so important that we see that we're not alone in this, that there are resources available, and, that we can help each other, get through these challenges, that none of us are unique, even though each situation might be, a little different. There's a lot of similarities there. So I wanted to share a little bit about my personal, experience. I became active in substance use at a very young age. From 12 or 13, I was sneaking cases beers out of my dad's cooler and starting to drink them. I was, finding marijuana, cigarettes, other substances, and it progressed very rapidly. At a very young age, I had really developed full substance use disorder. My parental situation was a little challenging. My parents got divorced when I was young, a lot of emotional unrest. I found very early that using substances made me feel really good. So if I had bad feelings as a result of what was going on in my life, I now had a solution, so I thought, to get rid of those feelings. I became completely dependent on the substances to manage my emotions. I didn't develop any of the healthy coping skills that I needed. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I was really, getting to the point where I was bottoming out from addiction. Thinking back to an experience where, I had been pulled over with friends driving. They had taken us down to the police station. They had all the paraphernalia out on the counter. They had called our parents, and my mom came in the police station in tears. I remember that moment, like really just looking her in the eyes, seeing the pain that I had caused her, because this was not the first time there was an issue. This is, I had made promises in the past. But I looked her in the eye, and I remember telling her, I said, "Mom, I swear this will never happen again." And the thing that was different about that time is I really felt like I meant it. From the depth of any commitment that I could have made at that time, I truly meant that I was going to not use those substances. Now, I didn't get any support. I went back to my normal day. And I think it was 2 or 3 days later, I was taking a phone call to go out to a party and go right back to those same behaviors. So I mention that because this, substance use disorder is such a tricky thing. These commitments, I couldn't even make a commitment to myself. So when we talk about, how can parents help their children by setting boundaries, I, as a child who was struggling with substance use disorder, I couldn't set my own boundaries for my behavior. So that was really hard. So this is where, it was important to have, that family support. And I was fortunate. And again, I'm not sure if it was the right way to deal with it, but my mom had remarried my stepfather, who was in a long-term recovery. He was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he had literature from that program that he would leave around the house for me to find. They would, tell me that help was available when I was ready, but he also coached my mother on really backing off a fair amount on my behaviors, which, for me, it could have been a really risky call. There were some brushes with, losing my life from what I was doing, but, that space allowed me to kind of see that I was out of control. So I couldn't point to her and blame her. These were my commitments I couldn't keep. But they were there for support when the time came. So I just look at that. I look at the impact that my behavior had on my, family system, and now what I know, fortunately, I, kind of hit a rock bottom in my freshman year of college, realized I didn't have the emotional skills that I needed to function. And I just broke down, and I had my phone, and the first person I called was my mom, because I knew she was there to support me. So, so all of that, challenge that she went through with me, wasn't lost on me. It just took, enough of the consequences to pile up for me to realize that I do need help. And then in that moment, I reached out, and very fortunately I got it. And she picked me up and got me the support that I needed. And I've been in recovery ever since, which it's been a tremendous journey. And now, I'm in a position, I went back to school, got interested in health. I got this whole vision for what I wanted my life to be. And I saw that the substance use was a barrier to achieving what I wanted to become. Then I surrounded myself with people that were healthy influences, that weren't using substances. I got new hobbies, new habits. My whole life changed. And, that's the challenging thing with this. A lot of what we're asking, of young people or anybody in recovery is like, you're asking them to completely change their life. And for any of you that have tried to change any aspect of your life, you can imagine how hard that is. I mean, I'm struggling right now in quarantine, not eating all of my quarantine snacks. I've got them just for an emergency, but now I dig into them, most nightly. So, there's behaviors where, or I would like to exercise more. It'd be great if I meditated more, or any of these behaviors that, would make our lives better if we did them. They're really hard to do. So imagine, someone who's using a substance that, it really solves all of their problems. So it feels like to them, and telling them that they can't have that anymore, that they can't use this thing that provides this amount of relief that they're used to. And it's really tough. So I mention all of that because, for someone to get better from this, there's really a need for a lot of support. And, I come from, working in a facility that, specializes in that, in offering people a huge amount of support. I mean, we've got medical doctors, we've got psychiatrists, we've got counselors, we've got, peer support, we've got spiritual advisors, we've got a whole team that works with someone while they're in treatment with us to try to address the issues that they're dealing with and get better. And it's an amazing effort to see that, all come to fruition and work, but it's also very challenging because even with that, it's still very hard for people to change. And this is a very challenging, disease that we're all impacted by. So, one of the other things I wanted to talk about, I had through my journey some experience in training in intervention work and learning about family systems. And, one of the things I think is relevant, to this call is, looking at these patterns of behaviors, and that, your loved one that's struggling with addiction or that has gone through substance use disorder, or you may believe they have a challenge with substance use disorder. That's one piece of the picture. And then, you draw a circle around that, and there's a lot of other factors that are influencing that specific behavior. And a lot of times for someone to change, that family system, really needs to come together in a way that can support that person. So one of the things, I've done a lot of work with is looking back at patterns of behavior in my history. As you can see, my last name is Lush. So, I don't have to look too far to identify some patterns of behavior in my family. Ironically enough, I became an alcoholic. So, seeing that these stories are not, that not only am I not alone in this, but it's not just the person with the substance use disorders problem. It's really the whole family's impacted. So again, it warms my heart to see now 73 people on this call, looking for ways that they can better support their family members, because that's what it takes to heal, for people to heal from this. So it might feel like nothing that you're doing is working. I talk to a lot of families that are in that point of frustration where it's just, they feel like they've tried everything. Their loved one might have been to treatment 6 or 7 times and still relapsing and just struggling, and just feels like nothing's working. And there's always something you can do. It's all about having a future. And reflecting on that with this, COVID situation, I think one of the things that's really challenging, and I see kind of the memes about like not knowing what day it is and kind of losing sense of time. I think it really, kind of took away our future temporarily, because we don't know what it's going to be. And that's a scary place to be, not having a clear future. And I think substance use really does that to people, where they don't have a clear picture of where their future is going to go, or there's that hopelessness that there is no, future that's worth changing for. And, finding a path for your family where you can start envisioning what that future might be, and then build the boundaries and structures in place to help carry each member of your family towards that collective family future. I think is a really, powerful way to address this. And I think that's, really where these boundaries can be tools to guide people to a better future. And again, I go back to this COVID analogy. It's what's happening on a government level. The government's saying we all need to stay safe and in our homes, and they're putting boundaries on us. If I go out into the community and, try to go see a movie, I'm going to get a lot of funny looks, right now, because there's boundaries in place. And those boundaries are important because those boundaries are aiming to shape how the future plays out in the face of this really challenging, disease that we're dealing with. There's a lot of similarity, I think, with what families do and to support each other. And when you look at those rules and boundaries that you put in place, they can be very valuable and life sustaining, if they're done right. And then the other thing I'll mention, before I, pass the baton here, is that, to be careful with boundaries, because boundaries, if that wall that I build is too high and too thick and too strong and nothing can get in or out, then I can get very isolated, and it can be a very, scary place to be. So there's a potential for tyranny in too strong of a boundary. So having that balance where you can really have, a balance of freedom versus restriction, a balance of, what someone is able to do versus what they shouldn't do, is really, there's an art there. And I think that a lot of parents, really kind of toe that line to try to figure out what's appropriate. How much should I let my child, kind of learn on their own, and how much should I step in and really guide them specifically based on what I see. So again, it's important, that you're there, that you're learning this. But again, back to what I initially said, there's no book on this that anybody got, and on how to do it the right way. So we're all trying to figure it out together. And, fortunately, as soon as I reached out for help, and as soon as I see people reaching out for help, you start to realize that there's tremendous resources available to help you. So while there may not be a book, there's a Lisa, you can call her. So there's places where, you can go to get this information to help you to build that future for you and your family. So thank you.
Wow. Thanks so much, Adam. That was much appreciated. That was terrific. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm not going to take another minute to get to my gang over there, Pam and Bill. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
how do you want to go?
You can go.
Okay. Instead of going through like the history of parent things and so on, I think it's really important to jump right into today. We've got this pandemic, and it seems to be building, and anything you look at the news, it's scary. The big issue, I think, for people in recovery, it's a very scary time because of the isolation that is causing, and the fear that the parents have, that we've heard, is amplified. We're always afraid of our kids, something bad happening to them because of their addiction. And now some of the things that we put in place to really help them has been taken apart. So our fear has ratcheted up. I'd like to just jump right into something that Lisa touched on, and I'm going to make sure that we pass around the link to her PowerPoint presentation, because it has so many incredible pieces of information, just little gems that you can use. What I think I'd like to talk about, though, is those things that you mentioned, which is the bottom lines. And parents have to first and foremost establish bottom lines. In our case, it was the three that we established was sobriety, honesty, and respect. And in any community, that's very important. But if we have parents who have kids living at home, who've been at home. We have others that were away, and because of the epidemic, they've moved back home. And it's really scary. And, these are kids who may still be in active addiction, or not now having the tools that they needed, the people that they normally see and hang out with at meetings. And they may have lost their jobs. Parents may have lost their jobs, and the stress level in the house just goes crazy. And we're seeing that in the parents today. Many of the parents work in healthcare. And so how do we deal with that? And I think that it's important to establish those bottom lines. And when you communicate, and if there's a May 5th opening for the meeting, Kim, maybe you want to do something about communications, because it's not just what you say, but it's how you say it. And with all the stress that we've got, maintaining that feeling of family and not going at each other's throats could be really difficult. And getting on the same page, like Lisa talked about. Pam and I are different, and I met fear with anger. She met it with sadness. When we did get on the same page with our kids, and it took a long time, but thank God we did. And because being able to work as a team is important. And all I can say is that there is that thing that Adam talked about a little bit, which is not being too rigid. A tree in a strong wind has got to bend, or it's going to break. And you may have your bottom lines, and you may be rigid and angry, and that just won't work, because anger gets met with anger. But you can't be a pushover either. You can't just, so there's this place that you have to find for parents. And the more you can talk about it, the more that you can talk to parents like us, you can go to be a part of the conversation for that information. You hear stories that Adam talks about, and the fact that there are places that they can go if it gets unbearable for them or intolerable, or if it gets intolerable for you as a parent, where you're using those I words. I'm not comfortable with this. I don't want, this can't happen in my house, kind of thing. And to me, probably the most important is to be able to talk with a therapist. I mean, as a parent, to be able to talk to a therapist, to connect with them through telehealth or the phone, and just say, look, I need help. There's some things here. I need resources. I need to be able to address a specific situation, be it legal or something else. And Pam wanted to talk about a couple of things with regards to that tolerance. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So I love just kind of, I'm speaking from my truth, right? And as Bill said, my way of handling things is go to sadness and despair rather than anger. That's kind of where I'm coming from. And certainly we had 3 kids going through this process. When we started these family groups, 15, sorry. See, I told him, I said, you do the numbers, because I'm not good with the numbers. But anyhow, 15 years ago, there were 8 of us. And what the beauty of this was that we sat at a table and we just shared. All we shared was, oh my God, this is happening. Is this happening in your house? What did you do? Did that work? It didn't work for me either. Well, this worked. Well, I'm going to try that. Or no, that doesn't sound like my family. Things like that were so valuable. And one of the most, eye-opening, learnings for me, or experiences, or aha moments, was understanding that it's not that I'm saying, I got to put up a tough front. I don't love my kid anymore. I got to do this, tough love and all that. Because that, guess what? That's not me. But what I had to understand was there was a different way of loving my kid. Because the way I was doing it with all this kindness and understanding and caring and thinking I knew what they were feeling and all of that enmeshment, they have the word even for it, was actually undermining. their ability to believe in themselves and do what they need to do. Obviously, that was not my intent, but that was the consequence. So I had to learn that no could probably be the most loving thing that I could do or say to my kid. And then I had to start making it about me, which again, you know, we went through some really tough times for many years with our kids. And I lost myself. I lost my sense of self. I was feeling everybody else but me. And so I had to bring it back to what am I willing to tolerate in my home and what am I not willing to tolerate? And every family is different there. And as Bill said, we said, look, no drugs in you, on you, or around you. That was one, because I had to come to that place where I'm allowed to have a safe home. I'm allowed to feel healthy and be happy in my home. And God love all of us. This is tough right now because we are all amongst each other and we all feel that way in a lot of ways. So understanding that what can I tolerate and what can I not tolerate that works for me. And sometimes that meant space. I used to go up to my bathroom and turn on the shower because that was the only way that my boys would leave me alone. You know, I'd shut the door because they knew they weren't going to get to me at that point. But that was okay. You know, that was what I was saying to myself. Those were the things that I had to do to take care of myself. I also had to understand what am I willing to support and what I'm not willing to support. And what does that look like? That's that different kind of love. And you know, there were times where it felt really uncomfortable. It felt wrong. Setting up some of these loving boundaries for myself, because I was not used to thinking about myself, but also modeling these behaviors for my kids so that if I was taking care of myself, you know, my kids were getting the idea, okay, you know, this is maybe something that I should be doing. So I would go to support groups and talk to, and I had a sponsor, and I would work with a therapist, and I started learning this language because, you know, there were times where I was a great manipulator, still might be times that I'm a great manipulator, but at any rate, I had to learn, you know, that it's not about, I had to check my motivation. I had to make sure that this was about what was making me, you know, and my boundaries feel safe and happy and healthy versus me trying to control somebody's behavior. And this is where these parent support groups are wonderful. And Kim, Be a Part of the Conversation, has a list of parent groups. Many of them have all started online meetings where we all look like the Brady Bunch and we join in and we share just like what I was talking about. This is what's going on. You know, as a matter of fact, the other day, this friend of mine was sharing, she's got a kid that just had ACL surgery on his knee. And, you know, he's a pain in the neck right now. He's basically a jerk. And, you know, and he's isolating and he's really struggling. And she feels for him because this is just so tough. On top of everything else, he's dealing with all of this. But, you know, that acceptance, you know, that you talked about, which is not saying that I like the situation or agree with it or I didn't want this to happen. It's just saying, this is what's going on right now. And I just got to sit with it and I got to let him sit with it too. And that's just got to be, you know, okay. And so I've learned, you know, my daughter's a therapist right now, and she said she will check with me and she'll say, check, where are your feet? Because I'm really worried about my son who's a firefighter right now. And I try to turn it off, but I have my little tools and I check to myself, where are my feet? Right here, right now? He's okay. So am I. And these are the little tools and these little boundaries that I kind of say to myself, don't let yourself future trip. Stay here, stay present. So I love ideas. I would love to hear your ideas. What are you doing during this time? What stuff's driving you crazy? Maybe other people may have ideas of what they're doing to help out. You know, that's the best medicine we can give each other. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much. This is for all of you who don't know Pam and Bill or do and love them as much as I do. This is why they're such an important part of my life and the lives of so many parents throughout this region. Oh my God, you guys are just amazing, and it's so nice to see your sweet faces. So please start typing in some questions for us. You know, I'm going to go ahead and have us all, us panelists kind of, there we go. So hopefully we're getting a view of the Brady Bunches. Yeah, there we go. As Pam mentioned, I heard some really great stuff. And Lisa, I'm with you. I love the topic of acceptance. That's frequently where I go when I'm chairing a meeting. I think it's crucial to so many things. And especially right now with this pandemic, accepting our limitations. And you talked about being gentle with ourselves. Like, this may not look like the way it would have 6 months ago, whatever our circumstances are. So I really appreciated that. And I'm hoping people will, oh great, here comes some questions. Some things that I've been hearing, and maybe even some of the folks, our panelists have heard some of these things. Whether you have someone under your roof who is in early recovery, not in recovery, you wish they were in recovery, or not under your roof, and you aren't able to be with them, and you might have concerns. Just wondering, I'm just wondering what some of the situations are out there. As Pam said, like, what are you all struggling with? Someone has asked, we'll be able to share this video with others. Absolutely. As I said at the beginning, you're going to be receiving an email, but also just, you'll get an email at 7 p.m. tomorrow from us. But in advance of that, just go to conversation.zone/parents. And that will be the follow-up to this program. The video I'll work on this evening because it's being recorded as we speak. I'll get it edited and loaded onto YouTube, and it'll be posted on that page by the morning. And someone asked, where can I attend a group with Pam and Bill? Do you guys mind sharing where you tend to turn up these days?
So we, there's a Wednesday night meeting. Rosemont's parent group is on Wednesday nights at 7. And we'll make sure that Kim has all these links so that if you go to be a part of the conversation, it'll be there. We also have that's a nice big group of parents with all different ages of, so that, a lot of them are the 17 to 30 some odd age kids. And it's not just kids with drug and alcohol, but there's some with mental health issues only as well. Thursday night, we also attend one that's the Phoenixville Parkside Church, also at 7 o'clock. That's a smaller group, and mostly young men. Most of the parents have young men, which is funny how certain meetings kind of, end up that way. But and then of course Kim has a great meeting on Thursdays too at Heffero, right? Your meeting is
Wednesday and Thursday.
Wednesdays and Thursdays. So sometimes, but right now those are the ones. The Thursday ones we help run for the Parkside Phoenixville group, and then Wednesday we just have been going there for years now. So it's a great group.
Right. And of course, as we said earlier, most of these are online right now. So we're not there in person, but you can absolutely find us online. And I believe Pam and Bill, we can talk about this later, but if you're willing to share your email addresses.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then we can post those in that little part of that page that's about you guys as well.
So I always say this too. I love getting phone calls from people. And I'm not just saying that, honest to God, I am struggling. Bill knows I'm up at night with anxiety. He's sending me links on how to relax. So, but and I know that that's just kind of who I am. But when I'm talking with another parent and we're sharing, I'm not thinking about me anymore. Right. And so I just want you to understand, I think Bill and I both feel that way. I hope other parents feel the same way, that have been coming to these meetings for a while. It's just a nice release valve to know, like, to your point, Adam, we're not the only ones going through this. So.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Here's a question. I'm not sure who wants to take this. Maybe Lisa, how do you learn to trust? Lisa, you need to unmute.
Yep, got it. So, my first thought on that is that trust takes time. It shouldn't just be given. And I think that it can come really from watching behavior in action. Recovery programs are programs of action. I know that my parents always say they knew when I changed. And that's what I hear parents that I work with and that I do parental coaching with. They really can see a difference. And then there's time. Then there's still time where it takes to build trust. We say time takes time, and it does. It's those moments where you can look back sometimes and see the absence of something that didn't happen, that used to happen. So I think it's okay to have that part of yourself on reserve. You can still be loving with boundaries, but also holding back to somewhat protect yourself. Because if we just keep giving ourselves away, you know, our loved one with a substance use disorder will keep taking oftentimes. So, but then I also know that I've worked with people who really struggle with that part of themselves. And if it's been quite a bit of time, you know, and again, for everyone that's different, but other people are kind of saying, you know, it's time. If you have a support network that you're bouncing things off of, and they're like, you know, you just got 2 years, you know. I mean, I work with someone who has, I want to say she's been in recovery for 5 years. And within the last few months, her mother just grabbed her purse. She was walking out of the room and was like, still not ready to leave this around you yet. And, you know, that's like when it's time for the loved one to get their own help with, why am I still not able to trust? So I think it's really a balancing act. There is no exact formula.
Right. Thank you. I'm sure you guys all have thoughts about this. We've got a number of questions coming in, so maybe we might end up circling back, but given the time, I want to kind of keep moving if that's okay. Just a comment here, Bill and Pam nailed it as usual. Good to be reminded of boundaries. Support from other parents is invaluable. Thank you all for participating. Good to hear new ideas. And here is, someone says, I lead a Families Anonymous group in Lafayette Hill, a 12-step program for family members affected by a family member's addiction to drugs, alcohol, or behavioral issue. What do you recommend to people who need to learn the tools of helping, not enabling, setting and holding boundaries? Who wants to take that one?
I'll be, you know, Bill and I were just talking about that. And that, you know, I have to say, that is one of the things that we've been doing with the parent groups for years. And we even started a beginner groups just for that reason, because when a parent walks into a room and it's just getting started in this journey, and they've maybe had no idea their kid was struggling with these issues, and or it's been a long haul and nothing has worked, and they don't have a whole lot of hope, and they're in a lot of fear and trauma, basically. And so it's a process is going to need, you know, and it's understanding what are those things that you're willing to tolerate. It's that bottom line. What are those things you're willing to tolerate, and what aren't you willing to tolerate? And the only way that I know I was able to get that was to keep going to these meetings, keep having these discussions, and finding out for me what that meant. But you will hear yourself and other people as you listen to what they say. And and a therapist, I mean, I ended up it was a wonderful experience. Going to a therapist really helped me identify where my stuff was. You know, what is it that keeps getting me, you know, getting in my way of being able to kind of move past and not be so full of fear all the time. So that was my journey to get healthy, was to be able to first identify and figure that out.
I gotta tell you, I see recovery correlations between parents and people in addiction. And they have to do a lot of the same stuff. And with parents, and a lot of the parent meetings, having gotten sober myself, I knew that it was hard to get sober, and it's impossible to get somebody else sober. They have to want it. So a lot of the parents come into the meetings and they say, you know, I have hope that they'll get, I have hope. My response to that was always, good, you need hope, but you got to trade a little bit of that hope for some work, because parents have to work at this themselves. It doesn't come naturally. It's like a kid who's a terrorist in your home. who's got cancer, and they don't want, they don't want to get better. Well, of course they should want to get better. It's infuriating that they don't. But as Adam said, you lose control. You lose the ability to choose. And I also just want to blow her cover. Lisa's mom came to our parent meetings like 12 years ago, and she told us all your stories, Lisa. Sorry, we know them all. And she taught a lot of us that no is a complete sentence. We have to treat them where they are, with dignity, with respect, with love and compassion, but we have to do the work ourselves, which is sometimes very difficult.
Can I add one thing? I just want to add a quick sentence. My favorite line is the difference between supporting and enabling is if they can do it themselves and you do it for them, that's enabling. And it's just a really clean formula that you can run the questions through. So.
Yep, we often talk about having that script right next to our phone or wherever we might have it that says, I have complete confidence in your ability to handle this situation. Let's not rob our kids of an opportunity to learn from whatever their struggle is. And not taking a call is also sometimes really important. Lisa has trained us about the Sunday phone call, like if we're not constantly checking in on our kids and all that, and then they have to push pause on whatever their drama of the day might be. And I'm not saying that facetiously. Sometimes it is pretty dramatic, legitimately. But if they solve it themselves and we don't hear from them until Sunday and this bad thing happened on Tuesday, they might tell us about it and feel proud that they resolved it, or they might not even tell us at all because it's over, it's done with. So I always love that advice as well. So someone has asked, any advice for repeat relapses with an adult child, 27, that reaches out repeatedly after for help? I'll read that again. Any advice for repeat relapses with an adult child, 27, that reaches out repeatedly after for help? So I guess you got that, right?
Could I jump in with a little bit of input on that? Just some general information about the disease of addiction. So we know that substance use disorder is a chronic relapsing disease. So, that's, what the research is showing us. That's what our experience is showing us, that, relapse can be a part of this disease. And it's something that, can be indicative that the person does have a disease. So, looking at that, not getting discouraged by multiple, attempts at recovery, and focusing on the fact that there's been multiple attempts at recovery versus the fact that there's been multiple relapses. I think that's the important, thing to look at, because anytime someone makes an attempt at recovery, they're reaching for that better life. They're reaching for that different way. And it's a really, it's tough to grab it for some people. Sometimes the resources just don't line up where they need to. Sometimes, just the circumstances aren't right. Sometimes the timing's off. A million different things could lead to, someone not getting everything they need from a treatment experience, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't benefit from future treatment experiences or future support. So that's something to keep in mind, that, just continue to support the person, and like Pam and Bill and Lisa said, but while taking care of yourself. So don't, support the person at the expense of yourself, but, continue to support that person in any way that you can, because it's something, I'm 16 years in, I still lean heavily on resources to, maintain a healthy lifestyle and to be able to process things in a healthy way. I go back and I'm going to touch back on that trust question, because I think this plays into that. For addiction, it's like there's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like, I have two kind of people living within me. So, I didn't have the ability to trust myself. So, that's where it's really challenging. If, someone who's struggling with this can't even trust themselves, it's going to be very hard, to extend trust to them. But then there was another side of me that was very trustworthy, that was very accountable, as long as that Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde didn't come out. So it can be very confusing for people. So I say that, really just focus on, what's working. That part that's in that part of that person that wants help needs to be nurtured. Yeah, and any way that you can do that is well worth the time spent.
Great.
The
Thank
only thing
you.
I might add to that is, because this is something that, is happening across all our parent group meetings, is that there are chronic relapsers. And so from a parent's perspective, understanding that it's not just your child that needs to help and resources and understanding, we also do too. So that was a good understanding for me to know, is not only did they need to change, but I needed to change. And we had, Father Bill used to say, two sickies don't make a wellie. I mean, I really started to understand that some of my behaviors was contributing to the disease and not to, a healthy person. And it's not, as I said, nobody asked us to have this disease in our family. That wasn't a choice, but here we are. And the dance that I danced for so long with these kids that had this addiction started to really change me. And I was not dealing with them healthy. So that's what we would say to parents that are having this, is like, well, let's take a step back, and what's happening after they go through a program? What are they coming back to? What is that healthy plan that we have going forward? And what we always would say as parents is, here's what I'm willing to support. And each time it may change. And as we move through this process, it's like throwing mud on a wall. It's not like it looks like it's not sticking, but each time they're getting something. But what you have to do is start, again, changing how you're responding, understanding what love looks like at this point in time. And again, we always said we'll support recovery. It just may not be, a $30,000 a month recovery. It may be, that next level. And that's, again, everything is, different for every family. But folks like Lisa and Adam are people that can help you come up with that plan. And that plan is so important for the parents as much as for the kids.
Yeah, and just the short answer is, very often with these people who relapse and relapse and relapse, even though they seem to be doing all the right things, most of the time, in my experience, it's due to some kind of unresolved trauma. And so there are relapse programs specific to it. And again, rely on the therapeutic community to try to get in there. And a lot of kids don't want to get you to get in. They throw up, walls. But for that 27-year-old, the parent who asked the question, it's trying to get to the heart of what's driving it.
And I know Caron has a relapse unit, which is excellent, the relapse program. I think an important point to make about relapse is that relapse only occurs once someone's been in stable recovery and has picked up again. So if they're in and out of treatment and they're picking up within a week or 2 weeks, or that they're not really connecting and building a program of recovery that they're engaged in outside of a treatment center, that's not considered relapse. Just so, because I think there's a lot of misconception around relapse. So it's strictly defined by someone who's been in stable recovery and gone back.
Okay, we have a couple of really important questions that I really want to get to here. One quick one, someone asked about online online support groups for spouses specifically. I can say that Al-Anon tends to have a lot of, is that what you all would agree? Al-Anon's probably the best? Okay.
Definitely.
And I see that our friend from Families Anonymous also responded to her and provided his contact info. So thank you for that. But Al-Anon is a really great place, and they do have online meetings right now. Okay, advice for 25-year-old son who has recently relapsed and refuses to give up drinking. He is living with us and our 2 other adult children who are now home during this quarantine. Everyone is so uncomfortable. Any advice?
Who wants to take that one?
That is so hard. Those I statements, and sometimes it's not for us to come up with the answer. And I think that's something that Lisa and Adam kind of alluded to as well, is that may not be our job. You know, the way that at least I felt I could support them best was to say, this just is not working. You know, I am on, for me, I'm on, pins and needles. I'm stressed out. I can't do my job because I'm thinking about this all the time. It's just not working. I don't know how I'm going to resolve this, but I do have some good resources. And so I'm going to work with them and I'm going to come up with a plan. And it's just kind of letting them know that I can't keep going like this. This isn't working and I got to do something different. So again, you're modeling behavior by doing this. I'm going to go out, I'm going to get some help. And boy, that is what I would do. Call Lisa, call Adam. We have between Kim and I and a whole bunch of other folks, there's a wealth of folks, depending on where you are, that we can put you in contact with to come up with that plan of, what are you able to tolerate? What are those bottom line boundaries? And then, then it's a matter of how we can support this. And these are the choices that this person can make or not make. And so, I mean, I know that Caron's still accepting folks, if they're not able to stop drinking and they can't do that while we're going through this, then maybe there needs to be a new living situation where they can. And, and I feel like that's kind of, what we have to do is like, it just basically is out of our hands. I just know that I need to figure out what's gonna make me feel better because I can't keep going on like this for me. And those I statements are very powerful because we're not blaming them. We're not pointing at anything. We're really saying, this is about me, buddy. This is not about you. This is me trying to find a place where I feel safe and can be happy and healthy.
I love that. I agree. I think starting with the I statements and speaking your own truth is definitely the way to start. And if your bottom line is that you're not comfortable with them drinking in your home during this pandemic, you can say, while you were living in our home, I'm happy you think that this isn't going to be a problem for you. Maybe their problem was, their primary issue was a drug. And now they're saying, oh, well, now I would like to drink beer. You could say, I understand that you don't believe that this is an issue, but it's making me incredibly uncomfortable. And if you choose to do this outside of the pandemic, it's not something that I'm co-signing. I'm not supportive of it. That would then be your choice, but not when you're in our home, if that's what your boundary is, And a lot of times I think it's a good tool to give parents to say, if it really isn't a problem, then it shouldn't be an issue not doing it for now. If they're like, oh, I can take it or leave it. Great. Then if you could just leave it for now, that would be great.
I do like having, though, a plan. So, because if they say, you're right, it's a problem, I need help. And now you're like, ah! So, I mean, I would talk to someone and
definitely
come up with a plan, come up with options, right? That you're willing to support.
Yep.
And use your lifeline, as we very often say, which is, I'm your parent and I can't have this happen in my house. So I want you to talk to somebody, find a therapist, someone you trust, come up with a plan, and I'll support that. So that you're not actually saying, get the hell out of my house. You're saying, that this can't continue. Come up with your own plan. I'm 25 years old. There's 4 other people in the house that are uncomfortable. And it's destructive. So it's something that in most cases have to change. Unfortunately, a lot of our kids, especially the 20-somethings, are very entitled. And they feel that, they should be allowed to do this. So it's hard to break.
And stay connected to the parent groups. I know that it's 8:30, but we have one more question I think I really need us to address. So if you all are willing to hang in there a bit longer, obviously if our attendees need to take off, we understand. Thank you for being with us, but feel free to stay with us. Here's the last question that I see here. I am not a parent. I have a 47-year-old partner who went through an inpatient program for alcohol addiction. He has not had a drink in a year. It seems he has replaced drinking with smoking weed obsessively, playing videos, social media, and television. He's pretty checked out and often volatile. I want to be patient with him. This boundary advice is helpful regardless of relationship, parent, child, or partner. He's very proud of not drinking. I don't think he understands that he has replaced one addiction with a constellation of others. I don't feel like it's possible to communicate with him with these other things in his life. How can I get support in understanding this? He is two different people, and the two don't seem aware of each other. Soft, gentle, kind person, and volatile, righteous, indignant person. How can I encourage him to seek some other kind of help effectively? How do I protect myself from the volatility? Is very well put. It's so good.
It's a great question, and I'm so sorry that you're going through this. Let me just start by saying that I think that people who switch addictions are very proud of what they've put down. So, I would definitely lead with that. I know how hard it was for you to give up alcohol, and it means so much to me that you've made that commitment. And I would then just say, and, I also am having a really difficult time with when you're smoking or when you're gaming all the time, because it's hard for me to feel connected with you. I think just speaking your truth, and I would recommend doing that earlier in the day. That's generally what I tell people to do, is to try to not save these conversations, when the using's built up over the course of the day. I think speaking your own truth and definitely attending Al-Anon meetings if you haven't been, because you can really talk in a general way. It's not just about addiction is addiction. It can be very transient. It can change and morph into, other forms. This is very common. I don't know if this person is engaged in 12-step recovery, but by you modeling what we've been talking about and attending meetings yourself can be helpful. Maybe you could even ask, if they aren't attending meetings, if they would be willing to attend a meeting during this time. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it's a really safe time for people who feel anxious to attend meetings to do so very anonymously. I mean, you could literally have your camera off in most of them. There've been some Zoom bombs, so some of them aren't allowing it, but I would start with just sort of laying out what it is that you feel, and also what it is that you'd like to have. Maybe speak to a time, in years past where there was a deeper sense of connection. I miss that. I miss you. Really appeal to that love and that connection. And, I would caution you to not pivot it to finger pointing, which I think is really hard to not automatically do, but to just make it more of a conversation and the I statements.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Lisa, as well. I know, with the relationships, especially with my daughter, and I would say things like, this is a trigger for me, this discussion, and it doesn't feel good. And so I need to stop. It's not that it's not important. I want to hear what you have to say, but this doesn't feel good. I need to stop and back away, and then come back when they're calmer, because the volatile behavior is just not, that doesn't feel good. That's not acceptable. Again, what you would be willing to tolerate. And as I said, it can be done in that way. I had a son who was, he was the one that wasn't an addict, and he really identified that way. So when he became an addict, it was really difficult. But what I would say to him was, something is getting in your way. And I don't know what that is, because he couldn't hear from me. You got a problem, buddy, right? But I would say something is getting in your way, and we can no longer connect the way we used to. So, again, I would use, I am struggling with this, so I'm going to go get myself some help, because I don't want it to be like this. I hope you do the same. and so it's those kinds of conversations, and by the way, you are welcome to come to our family support groups, boy, because we have every different people, different family members and so forth, if you would find that helpful, at least to ease yourself in if you've never done an Al-Anon meeting or anything.
And get resources.
Yeah, resources are helpful.
And again, the online Al-Anon meetings right now, it's such an unintrusive way to just be there and listen in. And I'm sure that I know other 12-step programs have podcasts that list, live meetings and all that. Those are all, you just get great stuff. And you can usually find a topic, and there's almost always something relatable. Process addictions absolutely is a topic, behavioral process, however you want to refer to them. But this is not unusual. We call it whack-a-mole. You suppress one addiction and others might come up. And of course, he feels very proud that he's put down alcohol. And that's amazing. But obviously, this is a very natural occurrence, and it's all too familiar to a lot of us. And as someone mentioned, made a nice response to her about Al-Anon and open A meetings, but also safety is number one. So obviously, if you're ever feeling vulnerable, for heaven's sake, don't hesitate to reach out for law enforcement help if that's something that's absolutely necessary. Really important to mention that. But.
And couples counseling too, which I didn't mention, but that's a good forum to have some safety to have you both be heard.
Great point. And it could be a way too to say, I'm really, maybe, will you go with me, just so that I can feel supported too, so that you'll go together. I mean, there are a lot of ways to get somebody there, oh, maybe I'm blowing this out of proportion. Let's go. Why don't you go with me? That kind of thing.
Yes. Put it on the professional to tell you there's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Well, just the third party. I mean, I do it all the time with a couple that comes in and one parent is like, he thinks I'm overreacting. She thinks I'm underreacting. And, you just talk to a third person and they're like, yeah. So I think there's so much that can happen there. And to take the pressure off this woman in this case, to say like, you cannot fix this on your own. You cannot be the one to resolve the situation. You got to take care of yourself and hopefully, find a way to get him some help. So, okay. I don't see any other questions. Any final thoughts before we say goodnight to everyone?
Just wanted to thank you, Kim, for asking me here tonight and for all that you do for our community.
Yeah, I agree. This is great. It's a great opportunity to hear some good insight.
De-isolate.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. I'd like to
thank you all.
I'm sorry, Adam?
I'd like to thank you all as well. I think if there's a silver lining in this whole thing, it's us all becoming more comfortable with what technology can do. And I think, just thinking of that last question for the family, that now it's just a matter of them sitting down together in front of their computer and they could have a couples counseling session. I mean, it's really reduced the barriers to access some really incredible support. So, Kim, I just want to thank you for pivoting and be a part of the conversation online in, such a great way. And it's exciting to see that these conversations are continuing even when, we can't leave our houses. So it's great to see that I kind of have that feeling that no matter what happens, there's going to be support available. So thank you.
Look how the recovery community has rallied. I mean, it's amazing. And Mike Blanche said it so well last week. He said, forget social distancing. We can physically distance, but still socially stay connected. So
absolutely.
Thank you all so very much. Really appreciate it. Conversation.zone/parents is where you will find this video and related information. And if all of you panelists can send me any links that you'd like me to share, any contact information you want me to share, I'd be very grateful for that. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Yeah.